Well, thank you very much for joining us. I will get going now. It seems like we've got most people who registered online now, which is excellent to see. Moving on. Now, I know that on this webinar, we are very well attended, and I know that some people might not be overly familiar about who we are, what we do. So I'm just going to take a moment to just go through a little bit about us. We are a manufacturer of storage products specifically for the media and entertainment industry. We've been focusing solely on manufacture and software development of these products since 2008. And we've been involved with media and entertainment central storage really since prior to the year 2000. We've got a pretty full range of products, whether it's our Space, Echo and Vault range, which are aimed at large facilities, or whether it's products like our FastNAS range, which are aimed at either departments or post-production houses, anywhere really from sort of 2 to up to kind of 40 users, depending on the load and the codecs used. FastNAS has been around for around about 6 years or so, and is by unit our most popular selling product as well. So just to give you a little bit of history on the FastNAS product range. I know most of you guys will be familiar with the product. Launched about 6 years ago, and it really came around as we were seeing a lot of people who were doing not just straightforward editing of central storage, but obviously there was a big move forward and away from tape ingest. Most people were tapeless, and that has a requirement to copy data onto storage, and typically people will be wanting to run 1 or 2 projects at the same time, so that would be invariably happening whilst you're editing, as well as maybe wanting to push off to an archive, maybe an LTO archive of some description. So, you know, there were multiple tasks going on, and really the addition of the Nitro within the FastNAS allowed for the editors to keep editing at a good level of performance whilst the disks were there to capture information in and also serve any unexpected data copies such as archiving. And it was very, very well received. The fact that the product is incredibly quick to deploy, I mean, it's all up and running as you get it, so it's literally a toolless rack mount, plug it in, set an IP, and you are literally working with the product. It's extremely easy to support. In fact, a lot of our customers find that they're able to be self-sufficient in running the product as well and managing that forward. And that makes it really simple for any of our channel partners to put in and know that the product will work and that they'll have happy customers. Again, the performance at the time was very, very good. It's still a market leader in terms of its performance, and that allowed for a lot of flexibility in terms of what people wanted to do with the product. And it still has the Core4, albeit Core4 Light, which includes a lot of functionality like dynamic expansion as well, so that you can add on additional units and that volume effectively just grows and they keep on working. So if FastNAS was as good as we're saying, why do we need a bigger, better and faster one? And that's fairly straightforward really, and has been pushed fairly heavily over the last couple of years, especially the last 18 months or so. And what's really changed over the last period of time is that, sure, people are still bringing stuff in, they're still editing, and they're still archiving in some way. But with things like restricted hours to go into the office, we are hearing from a lot of people that maybe the office is only open 2 or 3 days a week. So it puts a greater pressure on the time that they need to be using the capture, editing and archive all at the same time. But I think really what's changed is that within the market, whether it's to do with the last 18 months with COVID specifically, or whether it's just a general change, I think it's probably more of a general change, that people are now delivering content electronically, whether it's via an Aspire or equivalent or through a cloud service. There's seems to be a lot more rendering, whether it's to a mezzanine codec or whether people are wanting to make proxy files, take those off, deliver them for proofs or work potentially remotely with those, and obviously do remote and potential cloud editing as well. So there's a lot more strain, if you like, within the system, and as we know from storage products, it's fine if you're doing some straight reading for video editing. You throw some writes in there, FastNAS can deal with that, others products not so well. But really, when you start then stacking up a huge amount more tasks which are invariably going on and want to be going on at the moment, then you can get these performance issues. And really what the latest generation 2 of FastNAS aims to do and does do very successfully is solves these problems, and we'll have a look at that and some performance figures throughout the presentation. So the generation 2 of FastNAS, it has still the Core4 Light software, which has been developed continually since its launch and has many great features in it. It's available with the Unifi Hub. It still has the dynamic expansion, and we're now moving on to the second generation of our VRE, Nitro and Blueshift, which I'll go into more detail a little bit later on. Performance, which will cover the meaning and meaningless performance numbers that people seem to band about, but we stand behind performance of up to 4 gigabytes or 4 megabytes per second delivery across the network, and that obviously is more than adequate to support the needs of 4K and 8K editing in the main. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Howard Tyne, our Chief Product Officer, and he's going to go through a little bit about Core4 and some of the merits of that come with the latest FastNAS. So, Howard.
Thank you, Dominic. Hi, everybody. It's great to have the opportunity to share this with you this morning. So, as many of you may know, all of our products are based on our Core4 technology, which is our operating system that kind of connects everything together, that has two sort of fundamental components, which is to ensure the performance and some of the technologies that underpin our hardware platforms, as well as offering users greater configurability and control. Now, FastNAS is no exception to that, and we've got Core4 Light in our FastNAS range of products, and it might be referred to as Core4 Light by name, but by nature it's actually quite a powerful toolkit. It's, as I said, focused mainly on providing users with a toolkit to better organize their storage, let alone the content that's held within that storage. So, we've got tools in there that enable people to create workspaces, to be able to configure those, configure the network protocols that are used to access those workspaces, either on-premise or remotely, which I'll come on to in a moment when I talk about Unifi Hub. But also define user permissions, create groups around users, set those up, managing sort of single sign-on protocols for things like Active Directory, etc., as well as connecting cloud services. And this is actually before you get to Unifi Hub. Core4 enables some fairly useful cloud service connectivity for functionality like replication of data to or from these types of platforms. As well as all of this, within Core4 Light, you get File Manager, quite a simple file management tool. There's Analytics Center, there's auditing, and of course, we've got the ability to enable Mosaic on FastNAS, which is our media organizer, which is a sort of initial step towards the media asset management domain of managing your content on your storage. So quite a powerful suite of tools within Core4. If I could have the next slide, please, Dominic. So Unifi Hub, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, but for those of you that don't, Unifi Hub is another suite of tools within the sort of Core4 OS domain, but one that's designed specifically to address two key issues that the industry faces today. The first of those being connectivity to cloud services, the second being remote working. Now, in the first instance, in terms of connecting to cloud services, within Unifi Hub, which is a software option that can be added to FastNAS, it's also available as a standalone appliance for legacy installations. And in terms of connecting to cloud services, we support built into the product platforms like Amazon AWS, Backbase B2, Dropbox, Wasabi, and Google Drive, to name but a few. We're constantly adding to the portfolio. In fact, we're working on Microsoft Azure right now. And what you do with Unifi Hub is define a certain amount of your storage, in this case built into the FastNAS, and use that as a cache. That means that people that are collaborating within your team to access content traditionally would have to download content multiple times if they're accessing the same project, for example. What Unifi Hub can do is the first time a user accesses a particular file, that's cached on the storage and means that anybody else that wants to access that same file don't have to download it. They can all access that same file that's already been downloaded. The benefit of that is not just a speed of access issue on premise, but also a significant cost saving with respect to egress charges that a lot of these platforms incur. Now, taking the other aspect of Unifi Hub, which is remote working, we created a software application called the Unifi Hub Connect client that you install on a PC or Mac. The remote worker would want to work with, using a VPN connection to create a tunnel between the home user and your storage on premise, in this case a FastNAS. The Unifi Hub will manage a cache area on that workspace, on that workstation, connected to a remote workspace on your FastNAS storage, and can download the content or some of the content selectively, or all of the content. The user has the choice there on their workstation, which means they have a sort of a local experience of accessing that content as if they were in the office. So these two technologies are the sort of the main building blocks that go to form Unifi Hub, which, as I said, is a component within the Core4 OS. And if I could have the next slide, please, Dominic. So, as I mentioned, Core4 sits on top of the technology that we're using to deploy the speed and performance that the FastNAS Generation 2 provides, the Nitro, VRE, and Blueshift. We've created this sort of Generation 2 of these technologies. Now, obviously, as I said, these underpin the technology itself. And now Dominic is going to delve into these technologies in a little bit more detail. So back to you, Dominic.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Howard. So as we've heard, the software allows for great tools, whether you want to manage, replicate, or access your data locally, remotely, through the cloud, from the cloud. It's all there and all functional within FastNAS. So what really sets FastNAS apart as a storage product compared to other storage products for media within the marketplace are these three technologies. And I'm just going to recap on what they do. So we have the VRE, and that is our velocity rate engine in the latest Gen 2 of FastNAS. This is the latest generation of VRE as well. And VRE is essentially our way of managing the FastNAS RAID system, and it does quite a lot more than that. It's aware of the system as a whole is aware of what throughput's going on the system. It's aware of what load the disks are under, and it can make adjustments and changes if required to make sure that we get the very best from the hard disks. And that's really important, but by having that calibration and the way that we can do that to get a huge amount more performance for media workflows compared to other systems. And then building on top of that, we have our Nitro. Nitro is our own technology, the same as VRE, and this is effectively a very similar technology to in hyperspace, which has probably been around for about 8 years or so now. And the Generation 2 is the latest version of that. And essentially, what Nitro is doing is it's using the inbuilt NVMe to accelerate key parts of data, not files, key parts of data, to make sure that those are being served out from a very fast device. And as I'm sure everyone's aware, NVMe's are very fast, not only in terms of raw throughput, but they're great when you're serving mixed files out of it. And the aim of Nitro, and again, it's continually watching, monitoring, and adjusting itself, is that it aims to have most of the reads that have been output from the system coming from Nitro, that then effectively leads the software, the VRE, the software VRE, to serve out any unexpected data and be there to accommodate any writes. And it works very, very well together. Anyone who's used the previous generation will know that, and this latest generation is even better. So with those two parts within the system, that's fantastic. But unless you can get that performance out of the system, it's fairly useless. And this again is probably the biggest Achilles heels of pretty much every other NAS on the market, that even if they were able to get a fast disk-based system, and even if they were able to emulate what we've done with the hyperspace and Nitro technologies, they would struggle to get that throughput to the network. And we've for a long time called our secret sauce, if you like, our blue shift, and that is how we deliver all of that performance over completely standard network protocols to make sure that the users get all of the performance that they need. And this is stepped up again with the next generation and is even more efficient. And we'll have a look at some of the kind of performance specs of that in a moment on there. So in terms of performance, what I would talk about is the megabyte myth. And it's very common these days that manufacturers put out a peak figure, whether that's 2 gigabytes, 1 gigabyte, 3 gigabytes, whatever it happens to be. And I think that people who've known us for any length of time will understand that GB Labs is very honest and realistic with our stream counts, and we've always dictated what the stream counts are, and we have a large lab that we have mixed Macs, PCs, Linux boxes, and we can test these performance streams. And I think in the past we've mentioned briefly that the internal performance of FastNAS previous generation, we're not doing that on this one. Suffice to say that the internal performance is excessive, but what we are prepared to disclose is that the realistic usable data that you can get across the network of the system is up to 4 gigabytes a second for the Nitro Max product. And let's just put that into perspective. Something like a 32 disk Facilis, for instance, will clock at a peak of 3 gigabytes a second. It's debatable whether it would deliver that, whether that's an internal performance. Even an SSD system by DDP will peak at around about 1 gigabyte a second, according to their website. And so it goes on. You've got the EditShare EFS 450 system, which is a cluster-based system. That will deliver around about 2.3 gigabytes per second. And again, with their SSD system starting at around about 3 gigabytes a second. So, in terms of not only stacking up against potential peak performances, what we can actually deliver is massively greater than the competition. And why is that important? Well, again, we've covered off some of the workflows where people don't just need editing. There's a lot of file copies and maneuvers going on in the background which eat up bandwidth. But I think equally, if you do need to start using that bandwidth, you're going to be faced with competitive products where you need to put 32 disks, or in a cluster situation, perhaps 4 processing nodes in. And this is taking up not only a large amount of rack space, it's consuming quite a lot of power, and then you've got to have quite a lot of cooling behind that as well. I think the trend at the moment is people are more aware of the power and the cooling that they're consuming, as well as a lot of companies wishing to downsize their rack space or their footprint in their server rooms, potentially looking at moving locations. And that becomes, you know, if one product is 3U and an alternative product consumes the best part of a half a rack, and the smaller product is still outperforming it, why wouldn't you go for the smaller product? So it gives you an understanding of the kind of performance that this is delivering out there. And how does that translate to reality? Well, stream counts always take a slightly larger hit than just the throughput of the system. The edit suites tend to buffer, and that can be a little bit abusive on the storage. But you'll see here, and if you do the maths, that we're still getting up to around about 3.5 gigabytes a second usable for video streaming type capabilities. The stream counts are really high. In fact, you know, you can pick pretty much anything, and you'll see that very comfortably that will serve an average workflow of anything from 4 to 40 users or so. So a lot of performance under the hood. And how does that actual performance stack up? Well, if we have a look at a competitive product, for example, this is the amount of streams that product is disclosed at on their website. If we have a look in comparison on the FastNAS Nitro Max product, for example, we can see the difference in the stream counts there, which is pretty large. I'm sure that the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that the stream counts at the screen are actually slightly slower. They're around about 30% slower than the stream counts on the previous screen. And there's a really good reason for that. And that's that whilst we were recording these particular stream counts, the system was actually ingesting from a few workstations some camera cards, which was equating to around about 500 megabytes a second of a capture or a write on the system. And just for a laugh, it was also writing a couple of LTOs at the same time, which was also equivalent to around about a 500 megabyte per second read from the system. So this quite clearly demonstrates the abilities of FastNAS in the real world of today's customers' requirements. It is not just required that people can deliver some stream counts. It is very important that people are doing other things with their systems, whether that's rendering, moving files, sending to cloud, etc. And I'm sure this is a very clear demonstration of just how strong the FastNAS Nitro Max is in this environment. Last month or so, we announced a new set of support options, and those are of course available for the FastNAS product, whether it's for a small post house that needs some business hours support on our premium, which is extremely cost effective, or whether they're part of a larger organization that might require enterprise 24/7 support. It's available, and you can be added to all of the product range. So I guess this begs the question, how much is it? It sounds great. It's a big step forwards. It can do a lot of other things. Prices of chip shortages, they're pushing everything up. So what has GB Labs done with the price? And the answer is pretty simple. We've kept it pretty much in line with the outgoing product. In fact, the majority of the F16 products, as in the non-Nitro products, have actually dropped in price. The F8 in terms of capacity and price points are the same. F16 Nitro, the entry-level product, is now 64 terabyte and slightly more expensive, and the Max products are in line with the previous range. So we're very pleased to say that we've produced a product which is far stronger and more capable. It also goes up to much larger capacities, and we've got a very, very similar price point to the outgoing product, which in today's market, where everyone else is putting their prices up, we're extremely proud of. To give you an idea of configurations, I'm not going to labor on this, but I'm sure the account managers and dealer channel will be we'll have this information very shortly. We will be sending out this on brochures, and there will be the price list available by the end of today. Will be sent out. We're going to send that out after the second webinar this afternoon. So within the next few hours, the price list will be available. But we can see in terms of the sort of network performances, of course, the Nitro Max is the fastest, but even the other products are still extremely quick on the real world network delivery. We've got 1 and 10 gig ports as standard across the board, and there's various options, and very much in line with the previous range. The form factors are all identical. They sell very well, and we haven't changed those, and the ethos of the product has remained very similar. So what I'd like to do is just share with you, we've got a new promotional video on this, and what I will do, there'll be a black screen for a second, but I'd just like to share with you this video, and then I will have a look at any questions that have come through, and we'll open for questions and answers.
GB Labs FastNAS Generation 2, powering creative teams. Demand for content makes collaboration mandatory in today's media production world. Today's media workflows have many tasks and projects going on all at once. These workflows read and write tasks simultaneously, which slow down traditional storage. That's why creative teams are demanding FastNAS shared storage solutions to power their workflows. Built on technology used by the largest broadcast, film, and video companies in the world, FastNAS with Nitro Generation 2 boosts performance by up to 1,000%, making it ideal for mixed workloads. Platform agnostic allows integration with virtually all MAMs and NLEs. GB Labs VRE Technology Generation 2 keeps your data safe while also powering the ability to scale to over 750 terabytes in seconds with no downtime. GB Labs FastNAS Intelligent Media Storage and Workflows, because deadlines aren't optional. Follow the link or call to schedule a demo today.